The girl who found her way in London. Amara had always been a dreamer, growing up in a small town. She spent most of her days imagining what life would be like beyond the quiet streets, the familiar faces, and the rhythm that never seemed to change. For as long as she could remember, London had called to her like a distant star, a place of endless opportunity, a city where anything seemed possible. By the time she turned 22, Amara knew it was time. She had saved enough money, packed her bags, and said tearful goodbyes to her family and friends. London awaited her, and she was ready to answer the call. As her train pulled into King's Cross station, Amara's heart raced with excitement. The moment she stepped off the train, the city's energy wrapped itself around her like an electric current. The busy platform, the hurried footsteps, and the constant chatter filled her senses. She had arrived in the city of her dreams, but now that she was here, it felt larger and more intimidating than she had ever imagined. Her first few weeks in London were a whirlwind. She had rented a small flat in East London, far from the shiny skyscrapers of the city center, but full of character and charm. Brick lanes, narrow streets, and vibrant street art decorated the neighborhood. It was unlike anything Amara had seen before. The city was alive, full of stories. Each street corner felt like it had a history all its own. However, as beautiful as it was, the city also had a way of making her feel invisible. In the middle of the crowded streets, she often felt like just another face in the sea of people rushing by. Her job at a local cafe didn't help. It wasn't what she had imagined when she dreamed of her life in London. Most days, she poured coffee for strangers and watched the minutes tick by, wondering when her real adventure would begin. One evening, after another long shift at the cafe, Amara found herself wandering along the Thames. The sun had just set, casting a golden glow over the water. The city lights were beginning to flicker on, and the sounds of London at night, cars, footsteps, laughter echoed around her. As she stood on the bridge, looking out at the towering buildings, she felt small. For the first time since arriving in London, she questioned whether she had made the right choice. Was this city too big for someone like her? Was she lost in the crowd? That night, Amara called her mother. The sound of her mother's voice was comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold day. "Give it time," her mother said softly. "London isn't a place you conquer all at once. It's a city you grow into, a city that reveals itself in layers. Keep your eyes open, you'll find your way." Amara took her mother's words to heart. From that day on, she decided to stop focusing on what she hadn't accomplished and start paying attention to the little moments, the daily rhythms of the city, the stories it told, and the people she met along the way. One Saturday morning, Amara decided to visit Columbia Road Flower Market, a place she had heard about from a colleague. The market was bursting with color. Rows of flowers lined the streets, vendors calling out to passers-by, offering tulips, roses, sunflowers, and plants of all shapes and sizes. The smell of fresh blooms filled the air, and Amara found herself smiling for the first time in a while. She wandered through the market, breathing in the vibrant energy of the day. As she walked, she bumped into a woman carrying a large bouquet of lilies. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Amara exclaimed, flustered. The woman, a few years older than Amara, laughed. "No harm done. These streets are always chaotic. It's part of the charm, isn't it?" Amara smiled, nodding. "It's beautiful here." The woman introduced herself as Zara, a local artist who lived nearby. They chatted for a while, and before long, Zara invited Amara to her studio. "I'm having a small gathering tonight with some friends," Zara said. "You should come. It'll be fun, a chance to meet some people." That evening, Amara found herself in Zare's art studio, surrounded by vibrant paintings and a group of eclectic, creative individuals. Musicians, poets, artists, everyone in the room seemed to have a story, and for the first time in a long while, Amara felt like she was part of something. Zare introduced her to everyone, and by the end of the night, Amara had exchanged phone numbers with a few new friends. Over the next few weeks, Amara began to feel more settled. She started exploring more of the city, taking long walks through Hyde Park, visiting the museums, and attending local events. She even joined a writing group that met every Sunday in a small bookstore in Notting Hill. Writing had always been her passion, and being surrounded by others who loved storytelling as much as she did reignited her creativity. London, once a city that felt too big, was beginning to feel like home. One afternoon, after a particularly inspiring writing group session, Amara decided to visit St. Paul's Cathedral. She had seen it from a distance before, but had never taken the time to explore it up close. As she entered the cathedral, the sheer grandeur of the space took her breath away. The high ceilings, the intricate details, the quiet reverence of the place, it was inspiring. Amara sat down on one of the pews, looking up at the dome above. In the stillness of the moment, she reflected on her journey. London had challenged her in ways she hadn't expected. There had been moments of doubt, moments where she felt lost, but each step of the way, she had learned something new about herself, about the city, and about the world around her. She realized that London wasn't a city to conquer or master. It was a place of constant movement, of stories unfolding at every corner. The magic of London wasn't in its size or its speed, but in the small moments, the connections, the conversations, the quiet discoveries. As Amara left the cathedral that day, she felt a deep sense of peace. She wasn't lost anymore. London hadn't changed. She had found her place, not by fitting into the city's mold, but by creating her own path, one step at a time. Months passed, and Amara continued to grow in her new life. She started hosting small writing workshops, sharing her love for storytelling with others. Her calf job, once just a way to make ends meet, became a source of inspiration. Each customer, each conversation, offering a glimpse into the diverse lives of the people around her. She even began writing a novel, inspired by the people and places she encountered every day. One evening, as she sat in her flat, looking out at the London skyline, Amara thought back to her first night in the city, standing by the Thames, feeling so small and unsure. She smiled at the memory, knowing now that it was all part of her journey. London hadn't been what she expected, it had been more. It had pushed her, challenged her, and ultimately helped her discover parts of herself she never knew existed. Amara knew there were still many more chapters to be written in her story, and as she looked out at the twinkling lights of the city, she felt ready for whatever came next.